In the depths of space, where empires rise and fall like distant stars, there exists a universal truth that even the most advanced civilizations struggle to accept. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. When the proud Draconian Empire abandons their own princess to die in the wreckage of a failed diplomatic mission, they never imagine that a simple human field medic, armed with nothing but basic supplies and an unbreakable moral code, would dare to challenge the laws of interstellar politics, ancient bloodlines, and racial superiority itself. What happens when humanity's greatest weakness becomes its most terrifying strength? When compassion becomes rebellion, and a single act of kindness ignites a war that will reshape the galaxy forever. This is the story of Dr. Marcus Chen, whose steady hands and stubborn heart refused to let a dying alien princess become another casualty of cosmic indifference. Little did he know that saving her life would make him the most wanted and most feared human in known space. Dr. Marcus Chen pressed his palm against the cold metal wall of the medical bay, feeling the subtle vibrations of the research vessel Hippocrates as it drifted through the neutral zone. 3 years into his assignment with the Galactic Medical Corps, he had treated everything from Zephyrian lung parasites to crystalline entity radiation burns, but the emergency signal crackling through the ship's communications system made his blood run cold. All stations, this is Captain Rodriguez. We're picking up a distress beacon from coordinate 77 Alpha. Single life sign, critically wounded. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Marcus wiped his hands on his scrubs and began preparing the trauma bay. In the neutral zone, distress calls usually meant pirates, smugglers, or worse. But the Medical Corps had one sacred rule: treat first, ask questions later. It was a principle that had saved thousands of lives across dozens of species, even if it occasionally put them in danger. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the small porthole, Marcus could see the twisted wreckage of what had once been an elegant vessel. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent quality he recognized immediately: Draconian technology. His stomach dropped. The Draconians were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy, their empire spanning over 200 systems. They were also notoriously hostile toward humans, viewing them as primitive upstarts who had somehow stumbled into space travel despite their obvious inferiority. "Doc, we've got incoming," came the voice of Lieutenant Sarah Kim through the intercom. She was the ship's pilot and extraction specialist, equally skilled at flying through asteroid fields and pulling survivors from wreckage. "And Marcus, this one's different. You need to see the readings." The trauma bay doors hissed open, and Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. On the gurney lay a Draconian female, but unlike any he had ever seen in the medical databases. Her scales shimmered between deep crimson and gold, forming intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. 2 elegant horns curved back from her forehead, and delicate wing membranes extended from her arms, though they were currently torn and bleeding. She was tall, even lying down, and would probably stand nearly 7 feet when upright, but it was her injuries that made Marcus move into action. Severe burns covered her left side. Her right wing was nearly severed, and her vital signs were failing rapidly. More concerning were the precise nature of the wounds. These weren't from an accident or pirate attack. Someone had tortured her. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Kim, who had followed the gurney in. "What did they do to her?" "Later," Marcus said, his hands already moving over his instruments. "Right now, we save her life." He had treated Draconians before, but only minor injuries. Their physiology was remarkably similar to reptilian species from Earth, with a few crucial differences. Their scales contained a complex network of nerve endings that made them incredibly sensitive to touch, and their body temperature ran significantly higher than humans. Most importantly, their blood contained a unique enzyme that made most standard medications either useless or potentially lethal. As Marcus worked, cleaning wounds and stabilizing her condition, he noticed something that made him pause. Around her neck was an intricate collar made of what appeared to be living metal. It pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to sync with her heartbeat. He had never seen anything like it, but something about its craftsmanship suggested it was more than decorative. "Her vitals are stabilizing," he reported to the medical recorder. "Burns are 3rd degree across approximately 30% of her body surface. Wing damage is severe but repairable. Most concerning is the neural damage. Someone used some kind of neural disruptor on her. Multiple times." As if summoned by his words, the Draconian's eyes fluttered open. They were the color of molten gold, with vertical pupils that immediately focused on Marcus with startling intelligence. She tried to speak, but only managed a weak hiss. "Hey, easy," Marcus said softly, instinctively placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. The moment his skin touched her scales, she flinched violently, and he realized his mistake. Draconians were touch telepaths, and physical contact could be overwhelming for them, especially when injured. But instead of pulling away, she stared at him with growing amazement. Her lips moved, and this time words emerged in accented but clear, galactic standard. You are human?
That's right. I'm Doctor.
Marcus Chen, and you're safe now. Can you tell me your name? She was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she had lost consciousness again. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I am Zaraketh, daughter of Emperor Vegthar of the Draconian Empire. Marcus's hands never stopped moving as he processed this information. A Draconian princess, tortured and left for dead in the neutral zone. The political implications were staggering, but his medical training kept him focused on the immediate needs. Okay, Princess Zaraketh? I need to set up a neural regeneration field for your brain injuries. It might feel uncomfortable, but it will help with the pain and prevent permanent damage. You know what I am, she said, and Marcus could hear the confusion in her voice. You know my people consider yours inferior. Yet you treat me as if you're a patient who needs help, Marcus interrupted gently. That's what the medical corps does. We don't care about politics or species hierarchies. We just care about saving lives. As he prepared the neural regeneration equipment, Marcus noticed that Zaraketh's breathing had become more labored. Her golden eyes were fixed on the ceiling, but he could see tears forming at the corners. They left me to die, she whispered. My own people, my own family. Marcus paused in his work. In 3 years with the medical corps, he had learned that sometimes the emotional wounds were deeper than the physical ones. Who did this to you? The Council of Nobles. They said I was contaminated, unfit for the throne because I had spoken in favor of peaceful relations with younger species, including yours. Her voice grew bitter. They called it treason. The neural regeneration field hummed to life, bathing her in a soft blue glow that seemed to ease some of the pain lines around her eyes. Marcus continued his work, treating burns, mending torn scales, and carefully repairing the delicate wing membranes that would allow her to fly again someday. The collar, Marcus said, nodding toward the pulsing device around her neck. What does it do? Zaraketh's expression darkened. It is a neural inhibitor. It prevents me from using my abilities, my people's natural gifts. Marcus had read about draconian psychic abilities in the medical literature. They were natural telepaths and had limited telekinetic powers. The collar was essentially cutting her off from a fundamental part of her biology. Can it be removed? Only by one of royal blood. Or, she hesitated. Or by someone the collar recognizes as having saved my life through the sacred bond of healing. Marcus didn't fully understand the cultural implications, but he could see that the collar was interfering with her natural healing processes. As he worked through the night, treating her injuries with a combination of human medical technology and adapted draconian healing techniques he had learned from medical databases, he found himself genuinely impressed by her resilience. Despite the torture, despite being abandoned by her own family, Princess Zaraketh maintained a dignity and strength that Marcus found remarkable. She answered his medical questions clearly, warned him about potential complications with her physiology, and even managed to crack a few dry jokes about the irony of being saved by a member of a primitive species. By the time the ship's dawn cycle began, her condition had stabilized dramatically. The burns were healing, her neural patterns were returning to normal, and the wing damage was responding well to regenerative therapy. But Marcus could see something else in her golden eyes, a growing awareness of just how thoroughly her world had been turned upside down. Dr. Chen, she said as he was finishing his final checks. You realize what you have done, don't you? I've treated a patient who needed help. You have saved the life of a draconian princess who has been declared dead by her own empire. When word of this spreads, and it will spread, you will become the most wanted human in draconian space. They will not allow this to go unanswered. Marcus sat down in the chair beside her bed, suddenly feeling the weight of the last 18 hours. So what do you suggest? That I should have let you die? Zaraketh turned to look at him. And for the first time since she had arrived, she smiled. It transformed her face completely, making her look younger and somehow more human despite her alien features. No, Dr. Chen. I suggest that you prepare yourself for war. Because whether you intended it or not, you have just declared that humanity considers itself the equal of the Draconian Empire, and my people have never backed down from such a challenge. Outside the medical bay, Marcus could hear the normal sounds of the ship's crew going about their duties, unaware that their quiet research mission had just become something much larger and more dangerous. He looked at Princess Zaraketh with her healing wounds and grateful eyes, and realized that sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting consequences you never saw coming. "Princess," he said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you about humans. We're not very good at backing down either." For the first time in days, Zaraketh felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. This human doctor, with his steady hands and unshakable principles, had no idea what he had started. But as she watched him prepare for whatever came next, with the same calm determination he had shown while treating her injuries, she began to think that perhaps her people had greatly underestimated the species they had dismissed as primitive. The war that was coming would test both their species in ways neither could imagine. But it would begin with this simple truth: sometimes the most powerful act of rebellion is simply refusing to let someone die alone. 3 days after rescuing Princess Zaraketh, the Hippocrates received its first official communication from the Draconian Empire. Captain Rodriguez called an emergency meeting in the ship's main conference room, his weathered face grim as he activated the holographic message pod. The image that materialized made everyone in the room step back involuntarily. A massive draconian male, his scales a deep obsidian black shot through with veins of silver, stared at them with eyes like chips of ice. His horns were more pronounced than Zaraketh's, and the elaborate scarring on his face marked him as a warrior of the highest rank. This was General Fexmar, the Emperor's brother and supreme commander of the Draconian military. "Humans of the vessel Hippocrates," the hologram began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "You have committed an act of theft against the Draconian Empire by interfering with the lawful execution of a traitor. The individual you have taken was declared dead by imperial decree, and your actions constitute an act of war." Marcus felt his stomach clench as he listened to the words. Beside him, Lieutenant Kim cursed under her breath. "You have 48 hours to return the traitor to the coordinates I am transmitting, alive and unharmed. If you comply, you will be allowed to depart with your lives. If you refuse, you will be hunted down and destroyed, and your species will be held accountable for harboring enemies of the Empire." The message ended, leaving the conference room in heavy silence. Captain Rodriguez turned to Marcus, his expression troubled. "Doc, I need to ask you something, and I need a straight answer. Is she worth starting a war over?" Before Marcus could respond, the conference room doors slid open, and Princess Zaraketh entered. She had recovered enough to walk, though she still moved carefully to avoid aggravating her healing wing.
She wore a spare medical uniform that was too small for her tall frame, but she carried herself with unmistakable dignity.
"That choice is not yours to make, Captain," she said, her voice carrying the same authority as the general's but tempered with something else: compassion.
"The choice is mine." She moved to the center of the room, and Marcus could see the pain it cost her to stand straight. The neural inhibitor collar still pulsed around her neck, its blue light a constant reminder of her people's betrayal. "I have listened to your debates through the ship's communication system," she continued. "You believe you must choose between my life and the safety of your crew, but you do not understand the true nature of what is happening here." Captain Rodriguez frowned. "Enlighten us, Your Highness." Zaraketh turned to look directly at Marcus, and he saw something in her golden eyes that made his breath catch.
A fierce determination that reminded him why she had been considered dangerous enough to eliminate.
"General Fexmar is not just my uncle. He is the leader of the faction that orchestrated my removal from the succession. This is not about justice or imperial law. This is about eliminating the last voice in the royal family that spoke for peace with younger species." She activated the room's holographic projector with a gesture that was both elegant and commanding. The display showed a 3-dimensional map of known space, with the territories of various species marked in different colors. The Draconian Empire was a massive swath of red that dominated nearly a quarter of the galaxy. "For 3 centuries, my people have expanded through conquest and intimidation. We have enslaved or eliminated dozens of species that we deemed inferior. But the galaxy is changing. Younger species like humanity are developing technologies that challenge our dominance. Instead of adapting, my uncle's faction has chosen to accelerate their plans for total galactic conquest." She manipulated the display, showing projected expansion patterns that would put draconian forces in conflict with nearly every inhabited system within 50 years. "If I die here, If I am returned to face execution, the last moderate voice in the Imperial Council dies with me. My uncle will have carte blanche to begin what he calls the Great Cleansing, the systematic elimination of every species that poses even the slightest threat to draconian supremacy. Lieutenant Kim leaned forward, studying the projections. How many people are we talking about? Conservative estimates suggest 12 billion sentient beings across 47 species. Zaraketh replied without hesitation, starting with humanity. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications.
Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical presence. By saving one life, he had inadvertently positioned himself at the center of a conflict that could determine the fate of the galaxy.
There has to be another option, he said quietly. Some way to resolve this without bloodshed. Zaraketh turned to him, and for a moment her expression softened. Your optimism is admirable, Dr. Chen. It is also what makes your species remarkable. But you must understand, my uncle will not negotiate. He sees you as insects to be crushed, not equals to be reasoned with. Captain Rodriguez stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where the stars wheeled slowly past. So, what do you propose we do? We're a medical ship with a crew of 30. We can't fight the entire Draconian Empire. No, Zaraketh agreed. But you can do something far more dangerous. You can prove that my uncle is wrong about humanity's capabilities. She gestured again, and the display changed to show detailed schematics of Draconian technology. Marcus recognized some of it from his study of their biology, but much of it was completely foreign. The neural inhibitor collar I wear is more than just a restraint. It is connected to the Imperial Communication Network, broadcasting my location and vital signs to the Royal Council in real time. But it also contains something else. Complete files on every military installation, every secret research facility, and every planned operation in the Empire's database. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. They put their entire strategic database in a torture device? The collar was designed by my uncle's technicians. They wanted to ensure that even if I somehow escaped execution, I would be completely helpless, cut off from my abilities, and carrying their secrets like a virus that would eventually lead them to any allies I might find. Lieutenant Kim whistled softly. Except they didn't count on running into humans crazy enough to actually try to remove it. Precisely. Zaraketh's smile was sharp and predatory, and for the first time, Marcus could see the royal blood in her veins. If we can remove this collar, we can access military intelligence that would allow the younger species to defend themselves against the coming invasion. But the removal process is complex. Marcus studied the holographic display showing the collar's internal structure. It was incredibly sophisticated, with bio-neural interfaces that had grown into her nervous system like technological cancer. Removing it would be like performing brain surgery while defusing a bomb. What aren't you telling us? He asked. Zaraketh hesitated for the first time since entering the room. The removal process requires a complete neural interface between the collar and whoever is performing the procedure. They will experience everything I experienced during the torture, and there is a significant chance that both of us will die in the attempt. Captain Rodriguez turned from the window, his decision already made. Dr. Chen, I can't order you to do this, but I also can't order you not to. This is your choice. Marcus looked around the room at his crewmates, people he had served with for years, people who trusted him to make life and death decisions under pressure. Then he looked at Zaraketh, standing straight despite her pain, offering to risk her life again to save species she had never met. If we do this, he said slowly, and we succeed in removing the collar, what then? The Empire will still come after us. Then we run, Zaraketh replied simply. We gather allies, we share the intelligence we've obtained, and we prepare for a war that is coming, whether we want it or not. The only question is whether the younger species will face it blind and helpless or armed with knowledge of their enemy's plans. Marcus thought about the Hippocratic oath he had taken when he became a doctor. First, do no harm. But sometimes he realized the greatest harm came from inaction. Sometimes healing one person meant accepting that you might have to fight to protect thousands of others. How long do we have before your uncle's forces arrive? Based on the transmission time and the deployment patterns, I know approximately 6 hours. Captain Rodriguez activated the ship's internal communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are about to undertake a medical procedure that may save billions of lives, but will definitely put us in extreme danger. Anyone who wants to transfer to the escape pods and take their chances in neutral space, you have 10 minutes to decide.
No questions, no judgment. Over the next 10 minutes, 3 crew members chose to leave. Marcus didn't blame them. They had signed up for medical research, not galactic warfare. But the remaining 27, including Lieutenant Kim and Chief Engineer Torres, chose to stay. As Marcus prepared for the most dangerous procedure of his career, he found himself thinking about the chain of decisions that had led to this moment. 3 days ago, he had been a simple doctor following his medical oath. Now, he was about to attempt something that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Dr. Chen, Zaraketh said as he prepared the neural interface equipment. Before we begin, there is something you should know. The process will not just share my memories of the torture, it will share all of my memories. You will see my life as I have lived it, including my thoughts about your species. Marcus paused in his preparations. Will that change anything? For me? No. For you? She smiled sadly. That depends on how strong your convictions truly are. As the neural interface came online, Marcus felt the first tentative connection form between his mind and hers. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced, like suddenly hearing a new color or tasting a sound. And underneath it all, he could sense the vast, ancient weight of draconian consciousness, so different from human thought that it was like touching an alien star. Are you ready? He asked. Zaraketh closed her golden eyes and nodded. Begin. The procedure that followed would be remembered as the moment when humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage. But for Marcus, as he dove into the alien princess's memories and began the delicate process of freeing her from her technological prison, it was simply another patient who needed his help. Even if this particular patient happened to be carrying the keys to a war that would determine the fate of every thinking being in the galaxy. The neural interface activated with a flash of blue light that seemed to burn itself into Marcus's retinas. For a moment, the medical bay faded away, replaced by something that felt like falling through an infinite library where every book was written in lightning. Then, Zaraketh's memories hit him like a tsunami. He experienced her childhood in the crystalline spires of Dracor Prime, where she had been taught that Draconians were the apex of evolution, destined to rule a galaxy full of lesser species. He felt her confusion when she first learned about humanity's rapid technological advancement and her growing doubt about her people's superiority as she studied the achievements of the younger races. But it was the memory of her first meeting with a human diplomat that changed everything. Ambassador Sarah Williams had been part of a trade delegation. And Marcus experienced Zaraketh's shock when she discovered that this primitive human could match her intellectually, argue passionately for her people's rights, and maintain her dignity even when faced with draconian condescension. The memories blurred together, years of secret study, growing conviction that the Empire's expansion policies were wrong, and the gradual realization that she was becoming exactly what her uncle feared most. A royal who believed in coexistence rather than conquest. Then came the torture. Marcus screamed as the neural disruptor tore through his consciousness, but he forced himself to maintain the connection. Through Zaraketh's memories, he experienced the betrayal of being handed over to her uncle's technicians by her own father, the agony of having the collar fused to her nervous system, and the cold indifference of being left to die in space like discarded garbage. But underneath all the pain, he found something else, an unbreakable core of hope that humanity might be different, might be the proof that intelligence and compassion could triumph over brutality and fear. The collar's defenses fought back, sending cascades of neural static through both their minds. Marcus felt his own memories being invaded, examined by alien technology that catalogued every moment of his life with clinical precision. His childhood in San Francisco, medical school, his first patient, his decision to join the Galactic Medical Corps, all of it was absorbed and analyzed. Then something unexpected happened. The collar, designed to suppress and control, encountered something it had never been programmed to handle: the absolute conviction that every life had value, regardless of species or politics. Marcus's determination to heal, learned through years of treating patients from dozens of different worlds, created a resonance that the collar couldn't process. Now, Zaraketh whispered, her voice echoing both in his ears and directly in his mind. While it's confused, break the primary neural lock. Marcus reached into the virtual representation of the collar's structure, his consciousness guided by 3 years of studying alien physiology. The lock was a crystalline matrix of incredible complexity, but he could see the pattern now. It was based on draconian neural pathways, designed to exploit the specific way their minds processed information. Human thinking was different. Where draconian consciousness flowed in elegant, hierarchical patterns, human thoughts jumped and zigzagged, making connections that seemed random, but often proved brilliantly effective.
The lock couldn't adapt to his chaotic, intuitive approach to problem-solving. With a sound like breaking glass, the neural lock shattered. Information flooded through the connection. Star charts showing the positions of every Draconian fleet, tactical assessments of other species' military capabilities, detailed plans for the systematic conquest of 47 worlds. But more than that, Marcus gained access to something even more valuable: the personal communications between the Empire's leadership. He saw General Thexmar's private messages to his allies, discussing not just the elimination of potential rivals, but the complete restructuring of galactic civilization. The Draconians didn't just want to conquer other species, they wanted to domesticate them, turning entire populations into specialized servants bred for specific functions. "Dear God," Marcus whispered as the full scope of the plan became clear. "They're not planning an invasion. They're planning a harvest." The physical collar around Zarakath's neck began to spark and smoke as its neural inhibitors overloaded. But instead of simply shutting down, it started a countdown sequence that made Marcus's blood run cold. "It's set to detonate," he said, his hands already moving to prepare emergency surgery. "The collar is rigged to explode if it's tampered with." Zarakath's eyes snapped open, golden irises blazing with returned psychic energy.
How long? 4 minutes. 30 seconds.
Without hesitation, Zarakath sat up on the medical table. "Then we don't have time for careful removal. Doctor Chen, I need you to trust me completely." Marcus nodded, his training overriding the fear that threatened to paralyze him. "What do you need me to do?" "Place your hands on the collar and maintain the neural connection. I'm going to use my psychic abilities to force a controlled overload. It will hurt both of us, but it's our only chance." Marcus gripped the collar with both hands, feeling the alien metal growing hot against his palms. The neural connection deepened, and he found himself experiencing Zarakath's consciousness in a way that was both terrifying and beautiful. Her mind was vast and ancient, structured like a cathedral made of thought and memory. "Now," she said. Power flowed through the connection like liquid fire. Marcus felt his own psychic potential, something humans weren't supposed to possess, awakening in response to Zarakath's abilities. The collar tried to contain the energy, to channel it back into their nervous systems as lethal feedback, but the combined force of human intuition and draconian psychic might overwhelmed its safeguards. The explosion, when it came, was contained entirely within the collar itself. The device cracked apart like an eggshell, its fragments dissolving into harmless dust that scattered across the medical bay floor. For a moment, both Marcus and Zarakath lay gasping on the medical table, their minds still partially connected by the fading neural interface. Then she turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that took his breath away. She was looking at him as an equal. "Dr. Marcus Chen," she said formally, "by the ancient laws of my people, you have earned the right to claim a debt of honor from the royal bloodline. What is your request?" Marcus helped her sit up, noting that her movements were already stronger and more coordinated now that the collar's inhibitors were gone. "I request that you help us prevent a galactic genocide." Zarakath smiled, and this time it was the fierce grin of a warrior princess who had finally found a worthy cause. "That request is granted, but first, we need to get off the ship. My uncle's fleet will arrive in less than 2 hours, and when they discover what we've accomplished here, they will stop at nothing to prevent this information from reaching the other species." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. We've got company coming, and they're not here to talk." As the ship shuddered into hyperspace, Marcus found himself standing beside an alien princess who had just declared war on her own empire. The stolen intelligence they carried would give the younger species a fighting chance against the draconian invasion, but it would also make them the most wanted fugitives in known space. "What happens now?" he asked. Zarakath stood and walked to the porthole, where the swirling colors of hyperspace painted her scales in shifting patterns of light. "Now we do something that no one expects. We go to Earth." Marcus frowned. "Earth? Why Earth?" "Because, Doctor Chen, if we're going to convince dozens of species to work together against the Empire, we need to prove that cooperation is possible. And there is no species better at building alliances than humanity." She turned from the window, and Marcus saw that her eyes now glowed with a soft golden light, her psychic abilities fully restored and enhanced by their shared experience. "Your people have something that mine lost centuries ago, the ability to see potential in others, even in those they consider enemies. You saved my life not because of what I could do for you, but simply because it was the right thing to do. That kind of thinking, is what will be needed to unite the galaxy against the Empire. Over the following months, the Hippocrates became the nexus of an unprecedented alliance. Using the intelligence they had stolen from the collar, they were able to warn dozens of species about the coming invasion and provide them with detailed information about draconian military capabilities. But more than that, they became proof that cooperation between species was possible. Marcus found himself serving as an unofficial ambassador, his medical training and natural empathy making him an ideal mediator between species with vastly different biologies and cultures. Zaraketh, meanwhile, used her knowledge of draconian tactics and her restored psychic abilities to help coordinate defensive strategies. But her greatest contribution was symbolic. A draconian princess standing beside humans and other inferior species, proving that even the Empire's own nobility could recognize the value of cooperation over conquest. The first major battle came at the Centauri system, where a combined fleet of human, Zephyrian, and crystalline ships faced off against a draconian invasion force. Marcus watched from the medical bay as ships that had never fought together before worked in perfect synchronization, their different technologies complementing each other in ways that the Draconians hadn't anticipated. When General Thexmar's flagship was disabled by a coordinated attack that used human tactical flexibility, Zephyrian stealth technology, and crystalline energy weapons, the Empire faced something it hadn't encountered in 3 centuries: defeat. The war that followed would last for 5 years and reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. But it began with a simple human doctor who refused to let a wounded patient die, and a draconian princess who chose to believe that the universe could be better than the one she had inherited. Years later, when historians wrote about the Great Alliance War, they would debate the complex political and military factors that led to humanity's emergence as a major galactic power. But Marcus knew the truth was simpler than that. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against tyranny is compassion. Sometimes the greatest victory is won not by destroying your enemies, but by convincing them that they don't have to be enemies at all. And sometimes saving one life can save a galaxy. As the Hippocrates continued its journey through the stars, now accompanied by a growing fleet of allied vessels, Marcus Chen understood that he would never be just a simple doctor again. He had become something more, a symbol of what was possible when different species chose to see each other as allies rather than threats. Princess Zaraketh, now known throughout the galaxy as the Dragon's Voice, stood beside him as they planned their next mission. Together, they represented something new in galactic politics, hope for a future where strength came not from conquest, but from unity. The Dragon Princess had found her wings again, and the human medic had discovered that healing could take many forms. Together, they had proven that even in the vastness of space, a single act of kindness could change everything.